In this experience, I was with a group. Very often, I will be with people on the real side that I am familiar with on the physical level. Sometimes they will be as they appear on the physical level. Sometimes they will not. Regardless of either of these options, our real awareness will always know who they are and be able to identify them despite the forms they may take. With the real awareness, it more so leans toward impressions, a being-to-being identification, rather than identifying people through the body forms we are familiar with. Every being will have a kind of unique signature to them, and only the personal self will puzzle as to how it was able to discern the characters in the experience, despite them looking completely different. Some experiences can be this way too. It can be a scene that to the personal self seems to have little by way of content and be devoid of people, and yet the real awareness at the same time is receiving and reading impressions that the personal self is perceiving as adventures and interactions with people, despite sitting in what seems to be, to the personal self, relatively uneventful experiences. Sometimes, too, we will know and recognize who the individuals are on the real side, yet on waking, the personal self will not understand how these individuals that it has no accessible memory of seemed so familiar during the experience. The personal self can only draw upon that which it can access in this lifetime from its immediate mental memory files, although certain things will seem familiar through causal memory stirrings, whereas the real awareness oversees all of creation and all the lifetimes lived, and has complete ability to identify anything in creation consequently. it just falls to the personal self to put together the experiences from its more limited perspective, using the references it has collated and can apply to the experience, with additional information and insight from the real self that must be recognized, that provides extra detail that the personal self did not literally see during the experience. So here I was with my group, and they were new friends, despite not being in their physical level, personal self recognizable forms. We stood at the foot of a large hill. It was extremely steep, but certainly not insurmountable, as it was around 300 feet, I would have said. It was our objective to reach the summit, and despite the hill not being immense, the journey would not be easy. The hill was fragmented in places, large crevices and gaping holes that we would have to carefully negotiate our way around and across. In addition to this, the hill was littered with spiders of varying distorted shapes and sizes. Many of these spiders looked extremely mutated and ranged in size from your typical garden variety to the size of cars and houses even. They presented oppositional obstacles also to our climb, and were primed to attack us as we would ascend. Fortunately, my group and I were not alone on our spider-strewn hill trek. We were accompanied by a female. Again, with the real awareness, it can discern identity despite the forms assumed, and in this case, impressioned this female to be a real guide. This guide was in the form of the actress who plays the current role of Doctor Who, Jodie Whittaker, and she would lead us up the treacherous Spider Hill, picking the best route to assure our ascension to the top. We had all selected weapons, nothing especially fancy, just rudimentary clubs, and spider splattering baseball bats, but they were effective enough, it seemed. About halfway up the hill there was a small hut, and the guide would disappear inside of it momentarily, seemingly cranking up machinery of a kind. This produced an effect whereby all the spiders were seemingly deactivated and rendered helpless. Then they were all sucked as though by an invisible cyclone into the hut, and thus the hill was cleared, and now devoid of spiders. The way was clear, and we would see no further sign of the guide as we continued our ascent, and we would make the summit, and there we sat with a sense of completion. The spiders evidently were some representation of opposition in regards to our journey. Many times spiders have been experienced on the real side, and tend to be either entities of a kind or creatures of the dark forces, and if their webbings happen to be present, these can represent tap lines too. A mountainous journey is also a fairly commonly experienced real side feature, and may demonstrate the arduous and difficult upward journey to the recognition and positioning with the true reality of the All Is. The spiders here may well represent that which presents as obstacles to actualizing this is recognitional real intent. The dark forces who are unceasing in their efforts to prevent anyone from leaving their controlled creational matrix. As the decider of everything in our experience, and that includes the extent to which the dark forces can hinder us, as we simply can walk around all that they place in our path. It is only through agreement to the idea control tap-lining snares that they create that they can waylay or halt our process of becoming more aware. So in reality, the greatest obstacle to the is ourselves, or our personal created selves. Everything that we cling to, agree with, and are emotionally and mentally attached to, are self-decided tapline restrictions that keep us the effect of continuous creational experience that must be further endured. In other words, we are deciding to remain in creation by virtue of the fact that we continually agree with and maintain the effect experiencing activation of the ideas in creation and that which makes up our created consciousness. So these spiders may well represent agreement to emotional and mental ideas, self-imposed restrictions, and thus hill ascending barriers, either the ideas of the controllers, their controlling systems, or those of our own devising, our constant activation of the mental and emotional faculties of the personal self, which by their very design create experiences. Through this decided upon mechanism,